How you doing, guys? This is another episode of Around the Roots. I think it's episode 5. This is your boy Bird, and with always, I'm with Saskia. How you doing today?
Hey, what's going on, you guys? I'm feeling pretty good today, It's been a long week. I'm glad, we're here. It's Friday, so I'm really glad about that. That it's the weekend, about to hit the weekend, but doing good. How about you? How about yourself?
Yeah, I honestly didn't know it was Friday. Um, just getting a lot of work done. A lot of personal stuff, dealing with a lot of personal issues, but we're back here to talk about a lot of cannabis stuff that's been happening in the past weeks. Speaking of cannabis, I finally got some energy. You know, it's been a very low time in my life, so like when I'm depressed or something, my plants get feel the effects more than I do. And you can tell like they're just sad and withered and all this good stuff. So um, I finally got the energy to start the transplant process. So that's what I'm doing after this podcast is getting my next run going for the fall.
That's crazy how our plants be so in tune with us. Like,
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Like they know when we're not doing good, they're not doing good. They're like right there with us.
it's like once you look in the tent, it's like, oh man, it's like, oh, I'm neglecting my plans. What am I doing right now?
What is life? What are we doing? They know it, and it's such a nice check-in for like our even our mental health, because when you look at the state of your plants, you're like, oh my goodness, like I have not been treating myself well.
Hmm.
It's such a nice friendly way to check in on yourself. So I hope you guys are checking in on yourselves and you're checking in on your mental health. As you care for your plants, make sure to care for yourself. It all matters. We're one with this earth. We got to stay connected, and stay loved up. So,
Definitely. And if you don't have any plants, I would recommend you get some house plants. Just get some. You don't have to do cannabis. You don't have to do vegetables. It can literally be a basil plant. You can
yep.
get spider plants. You can get hanging Jew plants. And they help your environment as well as your mental health because it just for me, that's how I got started into this whole horticultural thing. It's just like I was trying to find a way to curb my depression, and once I got into it, it just disappeared for a while. So that was a very good positive thing that came with all this. Um, but today we're gonna talk about something that's not so positive. Um, I've been seeing in the news, well, like articles that's been going around, um, basically about people getting sick consuming cannabis. Um, so
Crazy.
there's been, a couple of articles, and they're calling it CHS. Some people call it scrobiting. Um, And basically, what this is what's happening to people is they're experiencing, nausea. Some people are having psychotic episodes, which is wild to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just wanted to, talk about this for a second because I feel like the thing with cannabis that people don't understand that it's not just like a drug like people think it is. Like each strain has its own properties. Each strain, you know, has its own medicinal thing that it does. So when you are consuming cannabis recreationally, you have to be aware of these things.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, just because you're a recreational consumer doesn't mean you can afford the ignorance. The you know, that to be ignorant of what you're consuming, you know, that's horrible. You know, it's just like, would you put anything in your body, like anything? And there's some people that don't even know what they're consuming, right? Like, you go to the grocery store and you don't even know if it's not grown organically, what does that mean? What
Right.
chemicals did they use? So you're already willing to consume things that was produced with chemicals, and you don't know those chemicals names, you don't know their side effects, their impacts of your body. It's just so normalized in our culture. So I think, you know, this is a really great talk, and for us to really break down, what are we digesting, what are we consuming, and how is it impacting, especially in the middle of a pandemic, our lungs and our,
Right.
and this, you know, this scrometing that they're saying.
Yeah, and I also wanted to get into consumption, because that's something that's very I feel like people don't really understand weed consumption. I know as a teenager, growing up in Boston, I when I was with my friends, we were smoking on Philly blunts and Garcia Vegas and Dutch
Yeah.
Masters,
Oh yeah.
and just ridiculous amounts of what we used to call regular weed, regs and green and the hydros and the KBs. Like, um we would have like 20 blunt sessions every day with like
Ah,
8 people. Like, we would consistently just one blunt after another, after another, after another. And
the
you
cipher.
know yeah, the ciphers would be ridiculous.
You're
So
taking me back.
yeah, exactly. Like, those days are long and gone. Like, I only do that with my siblings now. But it's it's good to understand your consumption, and your tolerance levels. My stepfather cannot consume cannabis at all.
Mm,
He tried it as a teenager, and he has some sort of like negative reaction towards it. So
mm.
people also have to understand that just because weed is legal doesn't mean that it's safe for you. Like, not everybody uh handles the effects of cannabis the same. Like, everybody has their own, endocannabinoid system, and we're all wired different. So we can't expect us to get high in the same capacity.
That.
Um, so I think I think that's one of the factors that's happening right now, especially with the youth, because they're consuming a product that we weren't consuming as youth. We didn't have the gelatos and the Gorilla Goos, and like, we didn't have none of that. The farthest that we had as kids was, Purple Haze and things that came from New York, like Sour Diesel. Um, so they're definitely consuming a way higher uh, potency of cannabis now. So that's something that people have to, think about. Like, you can't go and smoke 20 blunts if you're not used to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think and it's always interesting, you know, when you enter into these ciphers, you know, people just expect the I feel like the abuse is like normalized. Like,
Yeah,
oh, you can't tolerate it. It's like a challenge. And you're like, maybe
right.
I just don't want to. You know, maybe this is where I'm okay with being right here. And I think that too should be like more normalized. Like, no, it's cool. You know,
Yeah,
it's really, really cool just to be like, yo, if I just want to take a couple of puffs and I chill out. Because when you start that homegrown, it's different. It's different. It's a whole different feeling. So, you know, you're gonna smoke a different level. You know, I usually when I see people doing blunts on blunts on blunts on blunts, I'm like, oh yeah, your weed sucks. You got poor quality.
yeah. That's
Like, that's a
another
red flag
thing.
for me. Like, oh yeah, I know your weed sucks. No, I don't want any. I know you got that weed you got, it is poor. So I don't want to do that.
Right, and that's the reason why back in the day when we were smoking green and regular weed, we would be smoking an ounce a day within within our groups, because it's like the THC levels in these flowers were so low that our tolerance was just not, satisfied. Um, Another thing with the consumption today in 2021 is we have a lot of concentrates and dabs and vapes.
Mhm.
That's another thing that is very youth based. Like I feel like a lot of youth fall towards the shatters and the crystals and all this dab stuff. I feel like people need to understand that these types of concentrates are not to be used as like if you're smoking flower. Concentrates mean it's concentrated. Like you're taking 10 grams and turning it into 1 gram. Like that is a high concentration of THC to be consuming as if you were smoking a joint or a blunt.
Yep.
So I feel like this epidemic of people getting sick and going to the, like this person right here is saying he felt like he was trying to grab his intestines and pull them out. Like that is that's not we that's not what you're supposed to be experiencing with cannabis. So like it's just, there's a lot of talk about once people stopped consuming cannabis, like their effects subsided, but the ones that continued, the illness still pursued. It's all about moderation at this point. Like you have to understand that everything that we consume in excess will eventually be harmful. If you drink a lot of water, that will kill you. Um, so that's one thing you also have to understand is, moderation is key when it comes to, consuming something, especially if your tolerance isn't up to par. Um, how do you feel about that?
I feel like there's just the investment into education is just so poor.
Right.
Even when we talk to cannabis businesses and we're talking to them like, hey, work with us so that we can invest into, cannabis education. And that cannabis education should be done through an anti-racist lens. Like this was a racially motivated war on drugs. Like they labeled our plant a drug. This is crazy. And they did that so they could call Black people drug dealers. Like there's no way around it, So it's just all tied together. And when there's just such utter refusal, just to work with MRCC and to acknowledge this. It's like, oh no, we're dealing with racism. They want to profit off of the ignorance of the consumer and allow the racism to thrive as it continues, as legalization unfolds. And that's what's really scary for me, is just like watching this majority white wealthy industry, unfold, and a refusal, just an absolute refusal to partner with a Black, BIPOC founded, Black owned, nonprofit here in Massachusetts, and allow the racism to continue to thrive. It's just insane, and it's just like, wow, like we're doing this here in Massachusetts, but it's happening all across the country, and it's just and then there's just such irresponsible, messaging, I feel like, as the legalization is going on. Everybody thinks it's a party and
Right.
it's a great time.
Right.
And we're totally missing out on the awesome, beautiful talks that we should be having on how holistic and healing this is. And really having, this is a really exciting topic for me, and I hope we can get more into it, with our podcast episodes, talking more about how healing this plant is, and you
Definitely.
know how beautiful and amazing it works with us when we're responsible. But like everything, when you abuse it too much, your body's gonna let you know, like, yo, what are you doing? What
And
are
just
you doing?
right, and just to be transparent, I suffer from, cannabis abuse as well. Like, um, I suffer from chronic depression, so like I'm constantly smoking, because I feel like it helps curve, those those thoughts and like those feelings. Like, I get to a point where like it becomes physical and I can feel it in my body. So like that's the reason why I consume a lot of cannabis. But at the same time, I've been consuming cannabis for over a decade now. And I've pretty much have tried almost every quality of cannabis that there is, whether it's brick weed, whether it's the cleanest weed. Um, I've tried it all. I want to get into a conversation also about my
Wait, wait,
experience. Go
I
ahead.
got. I'm sorry, but just so the people can know what's brickweed, in case there's anybody listening that don't know what brickweed
Right.
is. Like what?
I'm aging myself. You're right. All right. So brick weed is basically, if anybody has ever seen like a police raid, a picture with a picture of a tire with weed in it, or like a metal bar that has weed stuffed in it.
Mhm.
Basically, that's brick weed. It's like back in the day, Mexicans and like Southern America would pack the weed in like trucks and anything that they could to transport it over borders. They weren't really necessarily, they didn't care about the quality. It's just a commodity, and that spreads from west to east. You know what I'm saying? Back in the day, everybody had that type of bud, and it wasn't every day that you can find good regular weed. Like, there was there was quality in regular weed as well. Like, you can get something that wasn't as bad, but then you can get something that just was just stemmy and just stringy, and it had 100 seeds in it. It had more seeds than it had flour. So people are definitely very spoiled in these days because they didn't have to deal with the seed farming that we had to do back in the day. We definitely had to sort through our cannabis to enjoy it. But just speaking on that type of cannabis, I had an experience where somebody had laced uh, their product with embalming fluid, which is something that they use in funeral homes.
I'm like, wait a minute, what?
um, yeah. So basically, back in the day, people would lace cannabis with certain materials, whether it be PCP, whether it be embalming fluid, um, just other things that would amplify the flower that didn't have pretty much no THC. They would try to enhance it with other things. So as a teen, ignorant and not knowing the education of cannabis, I'm just buying weed off of random drug dealers in the projects. And me and my friends consumed this cannabis, and we were tripping in a rainstorm and watching thunder come out the sky. So I've never felt that experience after that day. So I assumed that cannabis was, dipped in something. And just thinking back, like the way that it broke up was very different to anything that I've, come in contact as like an adult and stuff. So
Mm.
it's just like you have to be careful. with anything, with any type of illicit drug, whether it becomes legal or not. Um, you also have to just be aware of what you're consuming. And just to bring it into the legal market, just because it's legal doesn't mean that it's good. There's plenty of companies that haven't been doing safe cultivation practices, and the consumer has been affected by it. Um, and that goes from a range of stuff. Just trying to cover up mold just so they don't lose a harvest. And just not having quality product for the price point that they are selling it at. And that's another thing too, with where I feel like all these illnesses are coming from. There was a little epidemic that happened probably like a year ago with neem oil, that contains azarectin, and it was getting people sick. The thing about neem oil is that uh that oil is not meant for the flower stage. So you are not meant to put any type of uh fungicides, pesticides, anything to do with like trying to control anything pest wise in the flower stage. Once you're past the vegetative stage, you should not be doing that. And I've come across cannabis that tasted like neem oil, and it was labeled as being top shelf cannabis. But at that time, I wasn't a cultivator, and once I began cultivating, I bought neem oil, and the smell was similar to that cannabis, and then I was just disgusted because then I realized that plant was sprayed with neem oil to cover up a issue that it had.
It's a first, it's a lot to process. I want to tell people, like, you're sharing a whole lot real quick. I know you don't
Yeah.
realize it. Like, there was points where I wanted to stop you, but I was like, let me let Bird keep going.
Now
Uh,
we have an hour. We have 30 more minutes. We're gonna break this down because this is a very important topic for me. So any part that you felt confused, I'll break it down to you.
I feel like the part where people need to feel comfortable not smoking something. If you're looking at your weed and it's in front of you, you're looking at your cannabis, it's in front of you, and you're like, this plant don't look right.
Right.
This is why, as consumers, it can't just be on a shelf.
Right.
We have to be able to smell it.
To
We have
inspect it.
Yes, you have to, you must. If wherever you're purchasing your weed from, you're going into the dispensaries and they don't want you to inspect it, that's a red flag. You
Yes.
should know of the process as a consumer for what you're seeking when you're going into these dispensaries. You should not be purchasing and just like picking like, oh, there, or I want that one, or I want that. No, you should be invited to actually take a look at it up close. They should be able to provide all of that, and they should be able to allow you to at least smell it
I
and examine it.
right. I think at this point in our industry, that's not gonna happen in probably like another couple of years until people like MRCs, like us and MRCC, basically create this education. But I feel like the West Coast has a better understanding of that.
Yeah,
I
for
feel
sure.
like I feel like their setup is way more catered to understanding each strain and each batch that they have. I've seen videos and I've seen articles and I've seen many things in the West Coast, Colorado and California, where they have them in big mason jars.
Yep.
before it's they I don't even think like there's of course there's the dispensaries that have it bagged up like Massachusetts, but then you also have the dispensaries that are kind of like on like a craft cannabis model where you can walk in and actually inspect every single jar, every single thing. You can see it with your face before they put it into a package. And I feel like that is something that's very vital for cannabis consumers. Don't be afraid to ask questions. When you go into a dispensary, the people that are there to assist you through this process. They need to have all these answers for you when it comes to how the plants were grown, or uh, is it organic, is it synthetic? Like if they're not willing to answer these questions for you, then
Let
that's
us
a whole red
know.
flag.
Let us know.
You
Like, let
know,
us know how these bud tenders are doing, you guys. Like, because they should be there, and not for nothing, but they should be on the level. This is why we love growers, because the growers know the plant. They didn't study nothing. They didn't go to school. This was hands-on learning. This is science. They understood the plant very, very well, and the profiles and everything. So it's important that, when you go to these dispensaries, the bud tender there should have practically the equivalent knowledge of a grower, to
right?
be able to recommend, knowing the profile, knowing the terpene profiles, knowing your endocannabinoid
Exactly.
system, how it's going to interact with you and everything like that. That's what a bud tender is supposed to be. They didn't broken down the bud tender, so it's a whole different job. It's segregated from your grower. The grower actually has all that, and now the growers in the industry don't even know anything. They just, it's just Walmart weed being grown. So, we got to tighten up here, you guys, and really making sure that they're providing the services that they're supposed to. They're converting into recreational, but this started out as medical. And no matter what they call it, you guys, it's all one and the same. So don't let these Jedi mind tricks, of the marketing scam you out of the quality product that it's supposed to be. Because they're not supposed to be selling like less quality to recreational and higher quality to medical.
Right.
That's not what's supposed to be happening. It's all the same plant. So if they selling like less quality to recreational, that's a scam. That's what that is. That's a scam. So that means they don't want recreational dollars. You know what I'm saying? That's what it means. So they should be offering the same quality regardless of whichever side you fall on. It should be, the plant is just the plant at the end of the day. So you should have access towards it. And it should be a quality plant that quality flower that you're obtaining from them. So definitely, but I just wanted to go into it for a minute. Like, a lot of people, you get your flower and it looks weird and you're saying, maybe I should take a chance. What do you think about that, Bird? Because I just be like, yo, I'm all straight. I'd be like, I'm all set with this. Like, no, I'm good. And I
Um,
see, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm comfortable turning it down. Like, no, I'm good.
as so for me, when it comes to purchasing cannabis, which I haven't done in a while, um,
Shout out to the home growers.
shout out to the homegirl. It's just like you can't be scared to say no at the end of the day. Like when it even if it comes to the black market, the legacy market, it's just like you can't you can't be scared to be like, nah, I'm straight, bro. Like this is not. And I've come across people that are ignorant and don't understand. Like for me personally, I don't like sativa. So if you try to sell me a sativa and tell me it's the same as indica, I'm just gonna get frustrated with you because that's just telling me that you don't understand the differences between the two. You don't get that one is head high, one is body high. You're just selling weed just to sell it. So
Mm.
like for me, I look for whether it's legacy market, whether it's homegrown, whether it's dispensary. I'm looking for first off the terpene profiles that I like. I'm always gonna be looking for a hybrid indica leaning, um, and it just has to smell right. It has to feel right. You know, it shouldn't feel dry to the touch, but it shouldn't be moist as a sponge. You know, like it has to be the right consistency, um, like the right texture. Um, and yeah, like I just for me, I deal with this a lot with my siblings because they still deal with the legacy market a lot. Um, it's it's hard for me to get them to understand. They always, you know, clown me and they're just like, "Oh, Farmer Bird, you know, he knows it all." It's just like I'm just trying to educate them on like this is more than bad for you. Like it tastes bad, but in long term, if you keep smoking this, it's not gonna be good for you. And this, I want to also get into like the last thing that I feel like people are getting messed up is just like the differences between, you know, organic and synthetic and, you know, that type of thing, the transitions between those two can get you sick as well. Like once I started consuming organic cannabis, like more organic, when I smoke synthetic bud, it hurts my throat. It's harsh. It doesn't have any taste to it. And it makes me dizzy. Like it doesn't feel good to me. And I feel the same with like, you know, when you switch your eating habits. Like if you're eating greasy food, if you're eating, you know, bad stuff and then you switch up and eat some good stuff, once you go back to the bad, it's gonna mess up your body completely. So it's just a matter of, you know, understanding that cannabis is different in that way too. And you have to understand that you have to make sure that you're getting the cleanest product possible. Um, I'm a home grower, but I'm cultivating the cleanest weed I can possible. I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say I have the cleanest weed in Boston and you know da da da. I know that for a fact my cannabis is cleaner than anything that I will be able to purchase anywhere else.
And
And
that's on period.
yeah, and I know what's going into my cannabis. I know that it's only fish, it's crab, there's a little bit of malted barley in there. There's
Mm,
just natural things that I use: aloe vera,
mm,
coconut water,
mm.
uh, just things that people don't. The difference too is the price point. Organic is expensive and I have this conversation with a lot of growers um, that use synthetic. You know it's price efficient. I get it, but for me, I just don't like the process of growing synthetic, and I don't like the result that comes out of it. So
And I think it's important to as we examine our society and we know we're dealing with climate change. We know we're dealing with a pandemic, right? Where you can go to the shelves and everything is gone. Um, you can go to the shelves and the store is shut down. So I think that we're at a beautiful place in society where we're really getting back to our roots. We got to get back to our roots and we have to learn things the way our parents and our grandparents knew things. And that's from scratch. My family's from the South. I tell people I'm northern raised, southern bred. There's a whole lot of, shucking carrots and, your corn and, snapping your peas that I had to do as a child and cleaning kale and all these type of things I had to do as a child, just to get the food prepped for dinner. And so, when I look towards the cannabis plants, to me, it really, really brings me back home, where you're caring and cultivating in preparation for what you're going to end up consuming um,
right,
later on. So it's a natural, beautiful cycle. But I think it's important for people, like the things that you're pointing out, to say, like it's a nice way to connect. And I think as Northerners, we just have like we're not as connected to the land as folks down south. That whole process of like slowing down and actually prepping your meal. That's a joyful experience. For me as a child, I just, you had those Saturday cartoons, Saturday cartoons, Sunday cartoons. I just sat there and the bowls were brought before me, and it was a nice family affair, and I was able to, help prep, and then we had to get into the baking. That's what I really fell in love in the kitchen, was the baking part, all the cakes and cookies and cobblers and all that
Mhm.
type of stuff. That's where I had fun. Um,
Right.
and that's where I started learning recipes and ended up, becoming a baker, in my family, like learning. I'm the one who has all the recipes, the baking recipes memorized from my elders that are now deceased. Like I'm the one that has them all memorized. But it's important, I think, when, touch and place with these plants, like it just reminds me that process. And it just also reminds me that disconnect that we have up north than our southern culture, where it's just like way more, these are cultural norms down south, and
Right.
it's trying to, we're trying to bring some of that up here because it's really important to be connected to the land. This disconnect that we have, I feel like, it's bringing to light a lot of problems now that we're in the pandemic. People, why things are missing off the shelves, because people don't know how to grow. That's why they're losing their minds. You know what I'm saying? And please believe, like, people who are wealthy are growing. They ain't the ones getting everything off the shelf, because they got the yard space. They've got their gardens going on, and they're jarring for the winter times. Let me be clear. They're jarring. So they've got their jars going on and everything like that. So there's a whole process to this, you guys, that we have to and this really came into effect. So all this before there was these supermarkets. This is all a result after World War II. So it's also a part of knowing your history and how the manufacturing of food came into existence, and how, this has sped up capitalism to the point that people are now microwaving their food, right? We're not even talking about prepping the food anymore and cooking the food anymore. Nobody has time for that. Now you just got to zap it and eat it. And you feel
Yeah.
like you don't even have time to do that. So where are we, like, as human beings? If you're just in a place of consumption, 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 this is very, very parasitic behavior. There's a point, like, where this is very, very parasitic behavior, where you're just consuming endlessly, as if um that there's no the time frame, to actually produce is inexistent, and that resources are infinite. The earth is not infinite. The earth is finite. It has a limited amount of resources, and the way that we consume in this country is beyond what the earth can produce. It's just
Right.
insane. So, and it's very I feel like we also don't think, in regards to these plants, like like it does a lot for our soil, you know what I'm saying? But we should also be mindful of, like, our consumption and the cost of electricity, the cost of water. Yeah, it does beautiful things for the soil, but what's all this when it takes so much water and so much electricity, to produce indoors, and how is that impacting our earth, and impacting climate change? So I think it's important that we examine, like, we can get into that. That's a whole other talk, like,
Yeah, this conversation is very very intense and deep, only because nobody wants to have these conversations. So when that happens, it just becomes like backed up for years and years, and then more stuff gets built up on it, and then it just becomes such a snowball effect that it's even impossible to have the conversation. So it's just about, continuing to educate people, just trying to just voice these facts and opinions that we have, because we're not going in a good place right now. Like,
yeah,
we're definitely like in an incline. Carbon emissions is through the roof. Like, it's just a lot of things that we are not thinking about as the human race. And like, it just baffles me when people are confused to why they're getting sick, and why things are happening to them when they're not, interested in, learning about it.
yeah. You know, and it's so weird to me, you know, like reading the news. There's so much, you know, celebration for businesses opening.
Right.
It's just the dichotomy. It's just like, wait, are we celebrating them that they're opening, or are we celebrating the harm towards our community? What are we celebrating? Like, you know, because you can't do one and not acknowledge the other. And then if you acknowledge the other, what does the other one equate to? You know, and so, you know, where is the willingness to stand up and stand in solidarity with consumers? You know, and that's where we're at MRCC. Like, we're the consumer council. Like, if we don't stand firm, you know, it's very clear that these, you know, businesses, it's just the bottom line. And it's just like, okay, well, if that's the case, then consumers should be happy. If it's the bottom line, consumers should be happy, you know? So headlines like this are really, really like concerning, like absolutely concerning. Why are we dealing with people getting sick as legalization unfolds? You know, and I also think it has not for nothing, but going back into like all those theories, you know, I also think it has a lot to do with our medical industry, right? Because
Hmm.
it's not it's not legal everywhere, and then what they don't have, like, they're saying that they're ruling out all the tests, but I talked to nurses, I talked to doctors, it's not happening. They're not running all the tests. So if you end up having these symptoms, please, you have to go in there and you have to know to push. I want all the tests. Make sure it's all the tests, because once they test your pee, they'll say, "Oh, you could have smoked a week ago. You could have smoked 2 weeks ago," and they're gonna rule it out and say that it's because of scromity, you know, and it's just because your pee came back positive for cannabis. So you got to make sure, like, if you didn't smoke within 24 hours, like, there's a whole period that this should have, like, while you're smoking, this occurs, you know, and when you stop, it disappears. So if you smoked a week ago, why are you now feeling this isn't that, you know? And so you definitely should be aware of that, and also make sure your symptoms are not being confused with COVID, right? Like puking and being sick, you know, all of these things, making sure that it's not, you know, some other variant.
Yeah, it
Because
could be so many things, and that's what
yep,
the issue that I have with is that they're linking it specifically to cannabis, and it's like that is like a derogatory statement to me, because it's like you can't just blame something. You can't blame a plant for something. Like, it has to be some other variable. Like, maybe you got high and you ate too much stuff and you started throw, like, there has to be something else. Or it could be that the cannabis that you are consuming has properties that shouldn't be in there.
that's
Like,
what I was going to say. Like,
yeah, there's like,
maybe they dipped it in peroxide to help it pass the test. Maybe it's your body
there's a whole
letting you
bunch of
know.
stuff.
Yeah, maybe it's your body letting you know, hey, that place that you got this weed at, don't go back there no more. Don't go back there no more, because they don't have what your body needs. That's at the minimum what your body is telling you, is that
Right,
wherever you got that from, that ain't it. Don't
right,
go back. You know, if you've had this experience, whoever you purchased it from, I don't care if it's in the legacy market or the legal market, whoever you obtained it from, they don't have clean weed, because your cannabis should not be giving you treatments like this, you know. And then it's also about, like Bird said, like how much are you absorbing, like,
yeah.
you know, and
Like, you
and
can't smoke 30 blunts and expect to be normal, bro. It's like you can't. And the thing is, it's like 30 blunts. How it's like, how many strains within them 30 blunts did you smoke? Did you smoke several strains? Did you smoke one strain? Did you smoke indica and sativa? Did you smoke all sativa? Did you smoke some cannabis that had too many heavy metals in it? Like, there's so many variables, and for this to stop, we have to, like, focus on the education. Like, People
Yeah.
really just have to sit down and just observe what they're consuming. Just like with anything, just like with consuming food, consuming liquor, anything that you consume, you have to do it in moderation. You have to test it out and see if that you're even that thing applies to you. Because like I said, my stepfather cannot smoke a joint without him going through an allergic reaction. So this cannabis is a plan for everybody, but not for everybody. You know, it's like
And,
it's legal, but it's not safe, man.
on in at MRCC, our recommendation is always
Yeah,
start low, and then go high. Start low though. Like start
and-
low. Don't there's no need. This is not a competition. I know this cannabis, it's very, very a lot of masculine energy, a lot of like,
peer pressure.
yeah, peer pressures and the bong parties and hit it, hit it, hit it, hit it. Don't cough, 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 cough. It's very much like a frat party. It feels like at times. It's just really just about the party and not really about the consumer's needs. Even on the recreational side, there's a lot of like just frat party energy without any acknowledgement of the consumer's actual needs to enjoy the high. So I don't you guys let your high be defined by you. You know what I'm saying? However much you need is what you need. If you need that whole joint, take that whole joint. You need that whole blunt, take that whole blunt. If you need 2 puffs, 3 puffs, and you done, hit it and quit it, that's what you need. Put it out,
Right,
sit it down.
right,
Because how many levels are we gonna get there? Are you really, really trying to be high, or is this something else? And that goes into like, what one of the things they try to say is like, the reefer madness folks, cannabis is a gateway drug. Weed is a gateway drug, and it's not a gateway drug. The science proves it. You know what the gateway drug is? Trauma.
hmm,
Let's talk about that. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about, what's a gateway drug? Racism. That's a gateway drug. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the harm that they're impacting on people, and then people needing to smoke something to calm themselves down so that they can function in this fucked up society. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't want to talk about that, but they're gonna blame it on the plant. Just like these headlines, they're gonna blame it on the plant, but they're not gonna. And the only way you'll really know, honestly, is if you saved some of it and you're able to submit it for testing.
right,
And this goes back into like consumers. Consumers need to be able to test their own weed. Right now it's just for businesses. I think this whole conversation about testing needs to expand, because if this is happening more and we're having this scrometing occurring, there is a definite need for consumers to be able to self-test. And I want to see more of that occurring, where the option to test becomes a consumer right. I should have the right to be able to test if I'm purchasing it. I want to. And these type of headlines are going on, we being doused in chemicals, and getting doused in hydrogen and mold and all this type of stuff. Listen, homie, and I ain't trusting none of y'all. I gotta test this stuff out, because it's clear y'all ain't got no solid growers on your team. If you did, these headlines wouldn't be occurring like this. So it's not looking too good right now. So,
yeah. And we
shout
all
out to the home growers, because they always hold us down. They've been holding us down. They always hold us down.
right. And we have a comment right here from Cheyenne. I guess she had went through it, and I would honestly would like to speak to somebody that went through this episode, because I'm just curious of like where the like cannabis came from, like what was the process of that day or that week, like what were they doing, were they stressed? Like I'm really curious to see like the research on where this is coming from, because I'm pretty sure it's one of the things that I've mentioned, but it can also be just you just like just the moderation thing is just like
Yeah.
you probably just overdid it. You probably took too many dabs, or because this is
Or it's,
like just like I
or it's
haven't heard of any of this like in this sense like your body feeling on fire, like that's crazy.
yeah, I think either it's laced or, it's contaminated. I think a lot of people just don't realize how contaminated, how sensitive this plant is. I don't
Yeah.
think people are really, really like, if you don't grow it, you ain't gonna know. You're gonna be totally ignorant towards it. But once you grow it, you're gonna realize exactly how sensitive these plants are. Like we started out talking about, if our moods aren't right, our plants ain't right. That's how in tune these plants are, you guys. Like they are very much in sync with their growers. If the growers are having a good day, the plants have a good day. Growers aren't happy, the plants aren't happy. You now knowing all of that and knowing that you're dealing with a live organism, you want happy people. You want happy people because you want a happy high. So now your highs are not going to be as happy as they should be because the people on the plants weren't happy and the plants weren't happy. So guess what? Your high ain't that happy. Like it all comes down. It's going to affect your high. You're going to have a better high if you actually take care of your plants and allow your plants to love you so that you're loving them and it's just all reciprocal. I definitely believe that like they're very much emotionally attached towards us, and the more love you show them, the more love they show you, and it ends up coming out in the flower. The flower ends up coming through and it's just like shining and happy. And you're like, wow, my plant was really, really happy throughout this time. Shout out to the plants, shout out to me. It's not just the flower that produces, the high and helps your mood, as Berta shared with us, gardening helps a whole lot too. So just taking that time and sitting in nature and reconnecting with the land. It's a beautiful thing. I've been enjoying it. Like just growing even beans. And like I keep looking at these beans and I'm like, yo, when are my beans actually gonna grow? My green beans. I'm like, when are these green beans actually? I got vines for days. And I'm like, where are my green beans when are they gonna, produce? But
Yeah, it's just like excitement, you know what I'm saying? Just like
yeah.
the anticipation of like your fruits and the fruits of your labor literally. Like yeah, it's just awesome. Unfortunately this my vegetable garden, it hasn't been doing too good because it's just been like raining every other day, and that's terrible for outdoor plants that don't have anywhere to hide. They're in the ground. So, um, but yeah, man, it's definitely rewarding. It definitely brings you out of the reality of this world for a couple of hours while you're maintaining your plants. Um, but yeah, this episode was just basically breaking down, you know, just education on what you're consuming and what you're cultivating. Just understand that this is a living plant, and whatever it consumes, you are going to consume once the flowers are done. Um, and just use in moderation. If you're not a high tolerance person, don't expect to have a good experience if you consume too much cannabis. Um,
And we should definitely, I'm sorry, bro, but we got to get back into this, like, because we didn't even get into edibles. And then
no, that's concentrates, concentrates, dabs, edibles. That all falls in the same category as me.
I'm telling you, you sped by it too much, bro. Like, we got to get into like the edibles and like how.
I want to speak with some, like I actually I'm gonna reach out and I'm gonna try to find somebody that actually went through this episode, because I'm curious to see I want to hear it from somebody. The articles just don't speak to me as much as a person would. So
You know what? I can say this for certain. I remember like it was well over a decade ago. I had some weed and I smoked it and it made no sense. But all of a sudden, like my legs were on fire. Like a patch of my leg was on fire.
mm,
I never experienced it again afterwards. I never experienced it before that. It was a one-time occurrence. But like I did end up having like I didn't feel nauseous. I wasn't puking. I didn't go through all of that. But I
Right.
was just like I literally hopped up out of my seat and I felt like my body was on like something was on fire. I was literally like slapping myself. Like there was like a it felt like a lighter had been lit and it was hitting like a certain part of my leg. And I was just,
That's
oh my God.
crazy.
It's exactly what it is. It is crazy. You know what I mean? It is crazy. So and that's when for me at that point in time, this was a long time ago, I took a break. I was like, you know what? I don't like this quality of weed that's circulating out. I straight up did. And I stopped smoking because I was like, ain't no way I'm going to be a test tube. That shit ain't happening. Like,
Right.
I don't know what the fuck is going on around here. Excuse my French, but I don't know what's going on around here. But I ain't about to be the one where my body's all jammed up for a high. No,
Yeah.
I'm like, let me let whatever's cycling through that can just cycle through, and I'll catch it again another time. So I mean that this happened to me a long time ago. I was in college. When this happened to me. And
And
I
I'm pretty sure we all went through something like that, but we just don't remember.
yeah.
I never threw up off cannabis. I don't remember being on fire, or I did have instances where like the cannabis makes me like a little like dizzy, and that's only because it was probably like a sativa. And sativa and me just do not work. It's like oil and water. It just does not. So yeah, it comes back to just like you just gotta find your. It sucks because there's a lot of people that give up on cannabis because of these episodes. Like they'll try it for the first time and then something bad will happen and then they just never come back to it. And I feel like that's sad because it might have been just like that one experience. Like just thinking about people in the West Coast, there's a lot of people that didn't smoke in the West Coast because that dipping stuff was very big out there. Like dipping your planting like PCP and all that good stuff. Um, so like a lot of people didn't smoke because that was their surrounding, that was their environment. Like people were tripping off of wet blunts and going crazy and stuff like that. So it's all about your experiences at the end of the day.
So on that note, like that, we did go in some dark areas, but overall, as you can see, we still smoking and token. So, like it's not the plant. I think that's for me, that's how I feel about it. I feel that there's other things going on that and it
Yeah,
needs to be broken down. And Bird's done a wonderful job. Shout out to Bird today, like breaking this down more for consumer education. What does consuming responsibly mean? I hope you guys like got a little bit more, of an understanding. Like you should be asking some important questions. You should be consuming. Again, start low, then go high. Starting low, you're gonna be high anyway. So start there, and then letting it progress from there and finding your level. Everybody's different. That's a beautiful part about being part of the cannabis community is that everybody's experience is valid. Everybody's voice is heard. The way you consume the plant, the way I can consume the plant. Some people just want edibles. They don't even want the flower portion. Whatever works for you or doesn't work, as Bert has mentioned. Some people are just straight up allergic to it. That's
right.
important. Like, what does allergic reactions look like? These are things to know, you guys. So as you're encouraging people, oh yeah, try it out. You should know that you're having somebody who if they've never consumed before, that they could have an allergic reaction to it. Do you want to take on the responsibility of somebody having an allergic reaction to something? Do you know how to respond if somebody's having an allergic reaction to something? Do you know how to handle if somebody's experiencing scromiting and what they should do to alleviate their symptoms and what they should do as a follow-up? So these are important things to do as a community, you guys. We have to take care of one another when at middle of a pandemic. It's really, really important that we're just being mindful and practicing mindfulness and wellness as a community, and keeping the culture going for that.
Definitely, definitely. And that was our episode number 5. I also want to let y'all know that we are also audio podcasts, and we have several listening platforms now. We are on Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Spotify. So
Okay.
if you're not on YouTube that much or Facebook, you can follow us on Spotify as well, and listen in. There's also a cool feature on Spotify where you can leave voice messages. We would really love to hear from our community. Any questions, any comments about the podcast, and yeah, thank you for listening to my very my TED talk on health cannabis, um, and definitely reach out and support.
Bye, you guys. I hope you enjoyed our talk with us today, and we will see you again in another 2 weeks. We'll be back at it once again.
All right, peace, y'all.